Here I am, Alex Wykoff. Moderation's so nice, you get me twice. I'm the head of product at Airfoil. It's a global product design and strategy consultancy company. We've worked with over 300 different protocols and projects across the Web3 ecosystem. I'm in charge of Airfoil Labs, where we do our own special little integrations, and every now and again, I convince them to run validators. We're gonna run down the line, let everybody be able to introduce themselves. So off to my left here, we'll just let you take it away.
Beautiful. Hey everyone, my name is Banksy. I got that name because 3 years ago I bought a Banksy art piece, lit it on fire, and sold it for what ended up being the highest NFT sold on OpenSea for all of 2021. Right now I'm the founder of Xion, pioneering chain abstraction with some of these beautiful people on stage with us.
Hey everyone, my name is Bo. I'm co-founder at Polymer Labs. We're working on connecting all layer 2s together via IBC.
Asad, the architect of Okto. We are building chain abstraction and trying to simplify, interaction with any blockchain out there.
Hi everyone, I'm Robbie from Cycle, and it's really a pleasure to be here. Now we focus to build a liquidity abstraction to support liquidity to different chains, especially W apps. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to talking with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rami Ramachandran. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Router Protocol. We've been around for a while. We are these days you could call it a chain abstraction project. I guess originally an interoperability project. So, glad to be here.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. So the name of the panel is Chain Abstraction, Limitations and Opportunities. We're going to be taking kind of a broad view of things. And to kick it off, we're going to just ask it. Chain abstraction aims to simplify interactions across different blockchains. What are the key technical and architectural challenges that we need to be addressed to ensure that this approach can scale effectively to billions of users? So just like what we heard in the presentation prior, there are some key challenges. What are you all noticing? It's a free-for-all, so we don't have to go down lines. Just whoever wants to hop in.
I think the challenges in chain abstraction are trying to make it as vague as a term as possible to get more companies talking about it, to get more sponsorship opportunities, to get more media attention.
I think from a technical perspective as well, chain abstraction is fundamentally trying to give an experience for the end developers and consumer apps to have higher security, expressibility, security, and throughput to interact with across multiple chains. When we talk about multiple chains, the main problem is orchestration across them. It's quite difficult to have one chain talk to another and orchestrate the intent of the user. So architecturally, that's more of a challenge when it comes to any other chain abstraction they ask today.
Okay. So I was thought when I was first day to build Cycle, what I really want to solve. Yeah, I think there may be 3 things we have to do. The first thing, I think the most important thing, the chain abstraction must have to adapt to the rapid growth of rollup, especially deb rollup. But because in the past, there only have several layer ones, but they also have a lot of, I think, bridge solution really good to solve the problem. But why we now talk about chain abstraction? Because there are so many big Ethereum, Bitcoin layer right now. So I think it's important. And I think another important thing that chain abstraction must have to solve the interoperability problem. Yeah, so we can provide some solution to you as developer or to the end user, maybe make them to seamlessly communicate from different chains. So we must have to solve this. Yeah, and the third part, I think, day one, we have to talk about different ecosystem. Yeah, so even now, there are so many solutions, I think, for example, OpenStack, yeah, they focus to solve the optimism interoperability. But yeah, so base rollup is supposed to solve some Ethereum interoperability. But now for application, they must want to have some different access from even Bitcoin ecosystem and the Ethereum ecosystem. And now there are so many developers in town ecosystem. So I think chain abstraction must have to have a solution really integrated to different kinds of ecosystem. That's what we try to do. Yeah, thank you.
I think a lot of excellent points. I think the security, the varying consensus frameworks, the varying speeds across the chains that we're trying to abstract across, they're all super important. But I think the key issue is what do you mean by chain abstraction, right? I mean, it's such a catch-all broad phrase. Yeah, so I mean, it's maybe we just need to sort of take a step back and and I guess we need to have the discussion around Web3 as well in this bear market. But I guess let's just stick to chain abstraction. Right? I mean, so how do we define chain abstraction? Is it getting my token across from one chain to another super fast, super cheap, or is it settling my trade across any chain super fast, or is it giving the consumer a Web2 like seamless experience? That's part of the challenge, and I guess it's of a piece with how the crypto is evolving and how adoption is growing, and so I think early days you're going to see a lot of iterations.
I think my view on it is there's like on Ethereum, when we talk about chain abstraction on it, in the context of Ethereum, the elephant in the room is Ethereum finality across all these different layer 2s and layer 3s and so on. And there's a certain closeness of block space. So L2s on Ethereum without a native solution, without a solution that can handle like fast, low latency communication across them, the closeness is actually quite distant. So that's a problem that we've been focused on at Polymer, is trying to fundamentally solve rework protected low latency transactions across all these different rollups. And we believe that's the most important thing to kind of making the block space feel close and unified. And then you could build chain abstracted experiences on top.
Excellent. Yeah, these are great answers all around. I'll try and move it away from a theoretical to a practical. So in my case, I like real world example. I stake a lot of Atom, and then I take my staking reward, and then I pay out an employee in USDC on Polygon. And trying to move asset like state, like to claim a staking reward, flip it to a stable coin, get it across chain. It's no less than like maybe 6 different steps. It's a huge pain in the butt. And this might be a case where I think, I would like to have a lot of that complexity removed for me. I'm visiting for sure the wallet out of a DEX bridge, and then another wallet because I'm moving kind of from Kepler to MetaMask. Knowing that Kepler just added EVM, it's maybe going to simplify that a little bit. But this is one real world example that I think we could see some potential to kind of shorten the number of steps in that path for sure. So when we look at the role of L2 solutions and other scalability enhancements for chain abstraction for achieving widespread adoption, do L2s really help in this regard? Like, do we need more chains? I just moderated a panel where we were like questioning, are we going to keep on expanding into infinity and having liquidity fragmentation? Or is this actually helpful or not? What do we think?
I would just like to make it known that you said a real world example, and then took like 2 minutes to describe something that no one outside of this room is probably ever going to do in their entire life. In terms of like staking a lot of Atom and doing all this and doing all that, and like you go out, I could probably find like any person outside who's not a part of this conference and be like, how are you staking your Atom and then moving it across? And they're gonna look at me like I'm insane. I'm also in a hood, so I get that, but like and so in all actuality, like I think kind of going into the idea of chain abstraction and what all this means, right? Like we can make all of these things easier, and I think the end of the day, looking at that and saying like, for what end? And I think where ideally we really should be in that kind of conversation is actually making things that people are just inherently going to use. So yeah, like we could sit on this panel, how are we going to make it easier? Are there more L2s? Are going to be specialized? But I really think that like there's an inherent issue in this entire industry that there's just kind of no use cases and no applications outside of moving things around. And I think that's probably the thing that needs to be solved before we can really focus on much else.
I think chain abstraction should be solved at the application level. I think Uniswap recently just removed their convict wallet function on the UI. So from the perspective of the user, they don't need to know that they're using a blockchain. A lot of people talk about this, but I think long term, and to answer your question about like, do we need more chains? I think the block space today is insufficient to handle real-time applications. I worked at Uber. I saw the sheer amount of hardware needed to run a real-time driver and rider marketplace like Uber, and that amount of throughput is not possible on chain today. So if you want to create these real-time marketplaces, you do need more block space. You do need specialized block space, and then you need the applications to kind of abstract over them, and then the users at some point wouldn't even know that they're using this great technology in the back end.
A couple of things, by the way. the problem statement that you described, they're actually solved by most of the guys sitting here. I mean, routers is adapters where, you get one click, do 10 things, go from one chain to another, wrap your wallet, create an LST, go to an LRT, go into eigenlayer. That's actually solved. It's actually a marketing problem and a UI UX problem. To a large extent, the engine works, right? It just the car is not being packaged and sold. We're still in 1915 and going to the front and cranking up the gear. That's what it is. Do we need more L2s? I mean, do we need more real estate in Dubai? I mean, there is going to be a lot of talented developers coming in. There's going to be a lot of capital coming into the sector. And what's the simplest way to sort of make those two meet with each other? Create an infra thing. And what's the simplest infra play? I mean, an L1 and an L2. So you're going to have that. I mean, it's a hard constraint. I mean, do we need them? That's a broader question that sort of, I mean, and at some point you're going to have specialized L2s and you're going to have like Mega is doing its own thing and Monad is doing its own thing. And could have interesting flavors and combinations, but it's going to happen whether we debate and decide that it's not going to happen in this panel. I mean, it's not good in this panel.
Okay, so I actually think layer 2 or roll up actually incentive the realization of tree abstraction. So why I say it? Because in the past, I used to spend about 7 years to build high performance layer 1. Yeah, we do a lot of things in layer 1, for example, parallel VM, for example, optimizer, network communication. Yeah, a lot of things. And the TPS maybe can achieve 56K, I think. Yeah. So, but after that, I really confused because I really did some compromise to centralize, I think, in layer 1. Yeah. So after that, yeah, I think I used to try to solve something in a 2-dimension, space. But I think for rollup is used to a new solution to you in a 3-dimension space. I think it's really somehow solve the scalability of our industry. So, but compared with layer 1, it's really much easier to run operator layer 2. So you can see there are so many applications, but they can try to run their own rollup, so called the fragment. Yeah. So what we do, I think, is based on this. Because I think rollup is a huge process of our industry. So cycle for day 1, we want to provide something that can make those rollups can interoperate natively. So even you build a dApp rollup, you can just use cycle. You can integrate with any chain, any ecosystem, and anytime you want. So that would be built. So I think so I really like rollup and I really like layer 2, and I think it really solve a lot of real problem of our industry. But I think in the future, maybe a lot of super application will be happening here. Yeah, I confused. I'm really confident that. Yeah, thank you.
A lot of good points here, but the reason why there are more L2s is just because it started off a problem of throughput. Just one chain was not able to handle the throughput or the congestion of a given application, and for each consumer-based application, the gas just increases for a single chain conversion. So L1s are trying to solve in a different ways, trying to increase the throughput and block space, trying to make it more scalable, to have a mega chain in general. But when it comes to the L2s and the EVM security in general, consumer apps should not care about which L2s they build on, and L2s should not care about which consumer apps are building on them, because it's just a simple problem of solving higher scalability and having app-specific chains such that they can, build a security economic model around the chain. And second, just because of capital infusion in general, it's a way to attract new builders and talents to build on their ecosystem and gain. End of the day, all the chains are trying to just gain onto higher and higher level of user network. The more the users they have, that's a real asset the chain is holding on to. And anything which makes it possible is either capital infusion or scale or throughput. It's a matter of that. That's the reason why there are more L2s and L1s coming up in general.
So as we look at chain abstraction becoming more prevalent, what are the potential risks and trade-offs in terms of security and decentralization, right? More L2s, more bridges, more problems. What do you all think?
I think more chains means more orchestration. More orchestration means there is always a trade-off between what is on chain versus what is off chain. I think that has been a terminology difference that we have been calling off chain as a trust assumption that has gotten into the ecosystem, saying that, oh, we don't trust off chain compute. We don't know what's happening off chain. On chain is publicly transparent, verifiable. Uh, Recently, we've been having conversation with Arjun as well. And I think off chain compute is really important when you have multiple chains, L2s coming up, because that's the only way they can interact with each other and build a unified interface. On the other hand, the security challenges with an off-chain compute is the black box nature of it. You have to trust it that it is scalable, it is decentralized, or it is doing the right job of what the user intended it to do. So the higher problem of off-chain orchestration is making it more provable or verifiable in general. So the trade-off that any chain abstraction player right now is trying to make is that we deploy contracts on all the chains trying to interact with each other. We have off-chain compute engines, which is able to, give a Web2-like interface or ability to, move assets, bridge assets, solve for an intent, which is as complex as you mentioned, atom bridging, staking, and then rewarding in different tokens. This entire resolution to make it happen off-chain is what is the bigger problem in terms of security. ZKVMs, people like Agoric trying to build a consensus-based model of having immutable execution of orchestration. I think that is where there still needs to be done more innovation on. Till then, you have to rely with some sort of trust assumption or try to use AVS or Eigenlayer in general to relax some of the assumptions where things can be verifiable by nature. At Okto, what we did was we tried to decentralize the wallets because it's very objective. You either the wallets are signing or not signing depending on the policy. But when it comes to subjective conversations like I want 100 USDT to be aggregated across, I don't know how many chains that exist, but I want 100 USDT out of my portfolio. Find the best part. It's a very subjective conversation, and how do you make it happen? It's still up in the air to make it economically viable. VKVMs, Agoric, I think there are enough people who are trying to work on it, but that will solve for majority of the off-chain compute.
You can go. I think I think one of the big challenges with chain abstraction is that hyper innovation in the wrong places. And I think like I mentioned this before in the in kind of the other answer, but I think when we spend 95% of the engineering resources on something that's like used 5% of the time, I think that just because it's either difficult or there's money there because there's a few whales there and it consistently moves around like an airdrop farm PMF. I think that the idea of chain abstraction has so much potential, and right now we're kind of capped at as an industry at MetaMask users. And I think that we again don't have applications, and I think that's this kind of chicken and egg situation of no users, no products, no products, no users. I believe chain abstraction to be the solution to that. Yet I don't think that gets solved when we try to hyper optimize yield aggregation and placate to airdrop farming or yeah, I guess whales.
Okay, so for these questions, I think it depends. So yeah, it depends what the situation you want to solve. What's the problem you want to solve. So at the beginning with build cycle, we actually have some problem with my friends. They built a CeFi broker in CeFi, yeah. So I think maybe we can have a totally decentralized solution to solve this problem. So why the cycle day one we want to build something that can solve the security of the on-chain liquidity. So yeah, that was why we focused to solve this. So it really depends what you want to solve and what's the situation you solve. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the broad point that all of us are trying to make is security is super important, and we're only as secure as the weakest link in all the chains that we connect, right? I mean, I remember a few years ago, one of the bridges on Phantom, I think, they got hacked, and then we had a TVL-based approach, and we wake up, and then there's 100K from our bridge swap for worthless USDC on Phantom, and that's when it sort of hits you. We all know this theoretically, but then something happens, then you realize that holy shit, it actually affects you, right? From a router perspective, our approach has been, we started as a bridge. We weren't too happy with the security, the trust assumptions. We built our own Tendermint consensus POS chain. Then again, the paradigm shifted. A few apps wanted completely trustless security, so we sort of bolted on a ZK layer there. So at this point, dApps can actually choose between the POS security and the ZK security. And I guess there are also efforts around AVS that's happening. We're also working on extending Ethereum security, Eigen security to Cosmos through the mesh framework. So yeah, a lot of the thinking goes into security to burn Banksy's point. Yeah, I guess you're right. A lot of the resources are going into stuff that doesn't really have immediate, ROI. And then UI UX is what you're probably hinting at, which is 100% true. But I think the other aspect I would say security. I mean, with these things, right? I mean, you're flying Emirates first class. You want to have plush seats and all that, but you want to have an engine that's rock solid and doesn't crash. So I guess to counter your point there.
On the topic of security, since everyone's talking about it, L2s today, from the perspective of security, are connected via essentially duct tape. It's unfortunate, but that's just the state of the world. If you look at the costs associated with connecting these layer 2s, it's a little bit easier to understand. Many of the point-to-point interop protocols on Ethereum connect via 1 of 1, 2 of 2, maybe 2 of 3 multi-sigs. The cost of a multi-sig verification is significantly cheaper than verifying a zero-knowledge proof, than verifying the execution of a counterparty. These are just trade-offs that are made. There's a direct relationship between the cost of security and the amount of and the amount of throughput that you can put, or like interop throughput that you can put through the system. If you have if you want to prove like L2 to L1 settlement, that's going to cost like 800,000 gas. You're going to end up with a proof that's about 9 kilobytes raw. And with like a multi-sig signature, the proof can be, bytes. A signature can be 48 to 65 bytes. Verifying that can cost a few thousand gas. This is an order of magnitude difference. On tens of L2s, the cost of a multi-sig system may be, a couple $1,000s per day. On 1,000 layer 2 system, the cost of a multi-sig system becomes like tens of millions per day. And if you look at these like higher security models, you go from perhaps like $60,000 a day to hundreds of millions of dollars per day. So these systems become very expensive to maintain, which is why we built Polymer, to kind of offload and push all this interop throughput through our L2 to reduce the cost. We can get cost-effective security for less, and also help scale to the thousands or so L2s that are coming in the future.
So admittedly, I feel thread bombed right here. Like you all opened this up in about 15 different directions. Ramani, your point was really well made where, yeah, indeed, like you want to have like nice seats on the airplane and have a good experience, but at the same time, it needs to fundamentally fly. I think Bernd, you have a really good point as well, which is like, how do we make this real world and applicable to like normal people, right? Because isn't that the point of it all, right? And then Asad, I think that you touched on really well this whole concept of the problem, and it was kind of what I was wanting to get to at the previous panel. It's like when you have intents and off-chain solvers, like you're starting to get back into trust me fit mode. And don't we all kind of think that we're living in working toward a trustless system? So what happens in these scenarios? It's a lot to keep up with. So I'm struggling with like where to take this next. Brent, I'd actually like to maybe start with you and say, just give you the shot. Like you kind of were pointing at this concept of like, we're digging in the wrong space. So where should we be putting our efforts, intellectually and engineering and financial?
No, I think that's a great point. Great question, I should say. I know this is kind of going off of the idea. I do think that the airplane is flying. Like, I think we're at the chasm in this industry where, we have these, we have these early adopters, but now we have these mainstream users. The industry, the airplane is flying, right? It's can we hyper optimize it? Can we make it fly faster? Yeah, we can. But now I'm pretty much standing on like a wooden cardboard that's flying at 1,000,000 miles an hour, right? So yeah, at some point we should probably think about seats. We should probably like give people a reason to fly. Like if this thing's just flying into the middle of the ocean, I don't want to get on that plane, which is kind of the best example of crypto in this current market where any new user is effectively seen as exit liquidity, right? And it's really quick, right? Like the execution of that exit liquidity, oh my God, it's so fucking fast. You know, and so maybe we should not have new people lose their money and then be like, oh, that's this industry. That's how you know you're a veteran. Like I've been hearing that shit for 6 years, and it's not really conducive to getting users. And we see this in applications mostly, which is like, if you want to be like a YC backed, like this traditional startup like application company and really want to be an application, solve problems, you need hyper growth. You can't get hyper growth in this industry because you're legitimately capped, right? And yes, a lot of it is UI, a lot of it is UX, but I genuinely do think that we are at the point in this industry where we can look and say, great, the underlying is phenomenal. If there are going to be things that can make it better, that's phenomenal, but we shouldn't be looking to hyper optimize block space that's just not being used.
So it's interesting because, you know, I remember Bo's earlier point, and Bo, maybe you want to step in with a rebuttal. You were just saying that, like, you know, you were working at Uber and you saw the like challenge that if you wanted to build an Uber on chain, you literally can't. I think I would love for you to step in and offer maybe some clarification on your point.
Yeah, I can talk concrete numbers. If you look at all the L2s today, they push about like 100 or so kilobytes per second of transaction data through them. In comparison, at Uber, we push over like a petabyte of data a day. This is orders of magnitude, like difference in the amount of scale. So it's just, when I first entered the industry, I struggle with that problem. I was like, I don't think you can run like, you know, these Uber-like systems on chain. Like I just didn't think it was possible. I mean, with the roadmap now, it's starting to become a little more realistic. But I think we do need to, I guess, like expand a little bit. But I think the expansion, to your point, should be driven by the applications as well. I think as an application scales, and you know, Uber started off with just San Francisco, they will push the boundaries of the block space.
Yeah, I actually grabbed the mic because I thought I was going to disagree. But no, I mean, I completely agree. I feel like, unfortunately, most of the things here are very theoretical, right? Like, theoretically, right now, Uber does push out more than the highest L2. And I think, you know, there's a reason why we still sit here is because I believe that one day we'll get there. Rome, of course, was not built in a day. And I think that, you know, you always need these, like, stewardesses of innovation to kind of push forward. So I completely agree.
Excellent. Well, I'll say, unfortunately, we have hit our time. This just as things are getting spicy, we have hit our time. But a little bit, yes. But no, honestly, thank you so very much, everybody, for the panel. You've all given such beautiful answers and helped us to elucidate a little bit more. I think we do still have follow-up to do off to the side about what is chain abstraction. Can we actually pin that down to something? But yeah, thank you all so very much.